Welcome to part 2 of the counter-movement jump. The counter-movement jump is widely recognized as an excellent performance monitoring tool, but it can also be used in a rehabilitation setting. In this video, we'll be focusing on the metrics that we utilize when assessing the CMJ in a rehab context. In rehab, the standards for progression from one phase to the next often involves a limb symmetry index, or an LSI. An LSI is a chosen value typically between 5 and 10%, designating the acceptable threshold of asymmetry between limbs that we must meet in order to progress from one phase of rehab to the next. Using an LSI is a convenient way of tracking how well an injured limb is performing relative to the contralateral or uninjured limb. This is especially helpful when baseline data for that athlete or client is unavailable. We can apply LSI criteria to phases of the counter-movement jump. There are 3 specific phases of the counter-movement jump that provide us insight into how an athlete is moving. And for each of these phases, there are metrics that measure the degree of asymmetry, allowing us as practitioners to immediately feed this information back to the athlete, as well as make on-the-spot immediate decisions about how to tailor our interventions to address these deficiencies. The first phase of the CMJ is a rapid eccentric squat, during which the athlete quickly bends down into a position where he or she can propel themselves as high as possible into a vertical jump. It is important to see that the athlete can generate eccentric force equally across both legs. Often when an athlete has sustained an injury, they may favor one side over another when negotiating the eccentric phase of the CMJ. This can be quantified using the eccentric peak force asymmetry metric. The subsequent phase of the CMJ is the concentric phase, or upward movement from the lowest position of the squat until the takeoff. Just like the eccentric phase, it is important to see that the athlete can exert close to equal force through both legs when propelling themselves upwards into the jump. Using the concentric peak force asymmetry metric, we can visualize and educate the athlete on how much force they are expressing through either leg as they ascend towards the takeoff point of their jump. Lastly, it is important to understand how an athlete negotiates the landing. Injuries in sport frequently occur when an athlete lands in a suboptimal position. During the last key phase of the CMJ, the landing, we can observe how the athlete behaves when he or she contacts the ground. Just as the athlete is expected to be capable of using both legs somewhat equally to take off, they should also be able to produce similar amounts of force on either leg when they land. This is important because in sport, the environment may be unpredictable, and therefore an athlete must be able to rely equally on both of their legs when landing. The ability for the athlete to distribute force equally across both legs during the landing phase can be observed using the peak landing force asymmetry metrics. Using these 3 metrics, a coach can help to devise a rehabilitation program that not only returns the athlete to their pre-injury level, but also ensures that they are even stronger than they were before the injury, thereby maximizing performance and minimizing their susceptibility to re-injury.